All right, first of all, people who are unfamiliar with your company, explain exactly what you guys do here in Orlando.
Yep, so we create this technology called LiDAR as well as software systems for greater safety and autonomous capabilities on vehicles. So it starts with the sensing system of where you actually built it entirely from the ground up. Actually sends laser pulses out into the environment measuring how far an object is away and the distance in terms of how long it takes for the light pulse to hit an object, come back, we know exactly where everything is. And this is really what's going to be transforming the whole next generation of automotive safety and autonomy by working with some of the world's leading automakers to be able to implement this. But it all starts here in Orlando with the technical capabilities and the hardware and what's been possible over the course of the past, well, now approaching a decade of the core development that we've had to do.
People have heard about self-driving cars, autonomous cars for forever now, it seems. So what's different? What makes your company so valuable that you have this new technology that's going to change things? What's different?
Yeah. Well, I would say the fundamental thing about this company is about taking autonomy and these next generation safety systems out of R&D and actually putting them into production vehicles. So really the first and only company that's actually seen successfully that transition being made for these kinds of capabilities on vehicles that you can actually own and buy. And part of the reason is the objective that we have, unlike the vast majority of other efforts that are out there, is not to try and replace the driver altogether, to try and implement it in a robo-taxi use case with driving from point A to point B in an urban environment to effectively replace an Uber driver. The objective is for this is to substantially enhance the driving experience, give you superhuman driving capabilities, and ultimately move towards a vision of building the uncrashable car, so to say, to be able to dramatically improve safety and eradicate these tragic vehicle accidents that happen far too often. So it's all those things combined, and seeing this through of, we've been really moving full speed ahead to be able to actually see a significant ramp of this technology and implementation on real vehicles over the course of the next few years, and everything that's been leading up to that is a difference. So whereas the rest of the landscape is still, these are decade-long problems that people are trying to solve as we're getting this technology implemented today. We're working with the majority of major automakers as well in the broader landscape. So really seeing this market adoption is something that's being taken very seriously. Everyone from Volvo to now, just did an announcement with Mercedes as well that's implementing this.
And so you're going to start seeing these on Volvo cars pretty soon and other cars, correct?
Absolutely. And that's the transformation. And actually even with Volvo, for starting with their flagship models, they're actually now implementing this technology as standard on every vehicle produced. For their flagship XC90 EV, that's being released here in the actually relatively near future. That's being unveiled later this year. So lot that's going into that, and this is, I think, the biggest type of leap in a technology jump that you've seen. But Volvo has been a great partner, and they were the first to really implement a number of advanced safety features, everything from inventing the modern seatbelt all the way to airbag systems to other kinds of camera-based systems and mobilized systems to now transforming this with Luminar is going to be a big leap forward for everyone.
So young guy, still 26, right?
Yep.
Okay, so how did you come up with this idea? The technology's been out there for a long time. Is this something you dream about as a kid, or how did it get to this point to where you come up with something this revolutionary?
Yeah, so it starts out at a pretty early age, just always working on a bunch of different projects, always wanting to build things. Wasn't as much into traditional academia as it was just wanting to create value at the end of the day in interdisciplinary ways, but saw a big opportunity in the optics photonics world, that there was a lot of opportunities to be had that weren't being fully taken advantage of. And that's really what was centered in on this, is that after working on a few different things, I saw one of the biggest use cases for this is in autonomous vehicles. If we were to build something from the ground up, it could be transformational. And it was just a completely different mindset than what most people were operating under. So obviously took a lot of work. It took, 5, 6, 7 years worth of initial development, hundreds of some of the best specialized engineers from around the world, and with a particular concentration here in Orlando, and hundreds of millions of dollars to get to the technology to a stage where it can make all this work, make all this happen, and enable what we wanted to do. But be able to see that through, execute it, and be able to come out as great as possible on the back end of this. Obviously, there's still a lot left to do, but super proud of where we've come over the past 10 years.
So in a nutshell, I guess the elevator pitch, like they always talk about, your company, what is it for people?
I'd say the ultimate goal of all this is to enable substantially safer vehicles by powering the safest cars on the road and to enable autonomy globally. And that's exactly what we've been executing towards, and towards the ultimate vision of building the uncrashable car, so to say. All powered by this core laser technology that we have, or LiDAR, as well as our software to be able to make all of this come together and work with some of the largest automotive partners in the world.
Okay, so why choose to have your headquarters right here in Orlando? What's the secret sauce here that you said we're picking up from Silicon Valley, we're moving here?
Yeah, so there's a lot of secret sauce here, and I think that the key driver behind that was really around just the core talent base. Is that from a LiDAR standpoint, is that some of the best LiDAR engineers from around the world are actually stationed out here from largely the defense industry, the Space Coast, and other areas. And that was kind of the seed of what enabled this to all come together and happen. And while Silicon Valley has great software engineers and we have a great software presence there for everything, it's when it comes to Orlando, this has been a great talent base for everything, and not to mention a great place that people want to locate to when it comes to attracting international talent and executives from around the world as well. So it's really all walks of things. Of course, we do have a significant presence, everywhere from, California to Germany to, Colorado to, a number of different areas that we've been expanding globally in. But I think what Orlando is definitely very special, and it's only becoming, I think, more and more interesting, or even Florida generally by the minute, as we've seen over the past handful of years as well. So
I think for a lot of us who live here, we love it, and you see these companies popping up here and there, but to us it's just a place where there's theme parks and all this. Right. I think does it confuse your California friends? Because you're a California guy when you say, I'm going to headquarter in Orlando. Yeah. What's the reaction when you tell them, I'm moving the company to Florida?
Yeah, well, it's definitely a unconventional strategy, so to say. Particularly when we started building out the presence of the headquarters here pre-pandemic. And like 5-6 years ago. But that said, I think there's also a lot of people that appreciate it and just say, hey, it makes a lot of sense as well. And the key is getting the right talent where it is, and we still have great leadership and software and a number of other capabilities out in California, in Silicon Valley, talent across the board, as well as Southern California as well. But yeah, it's growing up originally in Southern California. It's definitely a different environment for sure, but it's only becoming more and more popular as of late. So I think it's people are now like, wow, how did you have the foresight to do all of this? So it's it probably looks smarter than we are. But that said, it was a good move, and but when it comes down to it, I think it's these things are not just instantaneous. These are gradual things, and you end up going more and more where the talent is, where the people are, and that's how it continues to develop. And we continue to attract international, talent and leadership for Luminar and for everything from around the world to be able to move out here and continue to drive things forward. So,
what's been the biggest surprise for you, living out here, working out here, that maybe you didn't know about Orlando?
Well, I would say certainly one of the more recent surprises is just how much of a disparity there is, say, with here versus some either California or other states, about just like the openness of the of the economy and everything else, which is certainly more here. And it's interesting going to places like Sweden, where it's like the same kind of approach. But yeah, that was one of the more interesting or surprising things. But I'd say more generally. Obviously the cost of things and the economics is a big shocker in terms of cost of living. That makes a pretty significant difference for people's lives. When they come out here and they can do all the things they wanted to do that wouldn't otherwise be possible in higher cost areas. Of course, at the same time, the question is that how we can continue to develop the right infrastructure, community, and everything else here locally for Orlando to continue to have it grow. And I think it's probably one of the highest potential cities in America, if not maybe when it comes to a number of different fronts.
All right, I love the story about how you found a place to live. Can you tell the story of how you found a house, the process of finding a house in Orlando?
Yeah. Well, originally, it's funny. Like 5 years ago, I was and ended up having to go door to door to be able to find the right place. Given the inventory was very low, and I wanted to find the closest place possible to the office here. Because I just ended up working most of the day, and at the time I was just going home just to sleep for a handful of hours, and then next thing you know, just back in the office again. But yeah, I ended up offering just incrementally above, the market value for the house. It was it was like 150K or
so you're going door to door,
literally go door to door. Yeah, exactly. Just knocking, wondering, hey, how do we make a deal here to get something done? But yeah, it was like a 1 or 2 minute walk. It was perfect. But and still got it. But that was the origin story. The first, at least my first place more generally, and the only place that I owned for like 5 years. But yeah, it's been good. Very friendly though. Everyone's always been very, very friendly, and that's something I appreciate here.
So the headline that always gets attention is the one that we saw as well: youngest self-made billionaire in the country. Are you comfortable with those titles? What do you think when you see those kind of headlines?
Yeah, I mean, it's less about, I think, capital and more about just what is representative. The thing that I'm most proud of, for sure, when it comes to this is that just the value that we've been able to create. I mean, and doing so at this scale, and that's really what it's representative of at the end of the day. And being able to create, X number of billions worth of value for, our employees, people, communities, economies, investors, all of the above in terms of what it takes. And that's something that, like I said, couldn't be more proud to have that as a part of the holistic notion of what we've been able to do and accomplish. Obviously the broader mission for what we're doing, which I think, is going to be the most significant thing by far that we do, is just from a life-saving perspective, and that's by far the biggest impact. But yeah, when it comes down to from a personal note and success, I think was able to fortunately retain a lot of the company, and part of the reason why that is, and why we got to this stage even then, is just because most of the time companies end up getting diluted multiple times over, 10 times over by the time they actually get to a stage where they go public or anything. We were very let's just say I took unconventional financing strategies and other things, throughout the course of where, you have to innovate, not just from a technology perspective, but from a business perspective, a financial perspective, and do all of these things in parallel. And that's where you can create insane value. And that's something, glad to be considered for that, globally. But at the end of the day, the goal is that what can you do to continue to scale, and at the same time, how do we leverage resources like with the making it possible to do things like the donation that did to the Central Florida Foundation out here too, to be able to provide for the local community and economy beyond what we do with Luminar is part of that beneficial mutual ecosystem.
Yeah, I want to get to that donation here in just a bit. I interview so many famous people, and they always talk about when they finally made it, the first thing they bought. So a car or a house, they bought their mom something. Was there anything you splurged on when you finally felt like you made it?
Well, yeah, you were just telling me about your book here too. I'm totally, I'm all
Give me
in.
a break.
100 things to do in Orlando before you
nice.
die.
Yes, thank you for
good.
the plug.
I'm in.
But was there one thing out there where you're like, I always wanted a Ferrari, whatever it might be. Was there anything, because you work all the time. You said you never leave this office other than the house. Is there anything you splurged on?
Well, it kind of maybe goes without saying, but I would say the biggest thing is how do we, building a successful, I've always wanted a multi-billion-dollar company that could be incredibly successful with incredibly successful employees and being able to get to this stage. That's the first objective.
That's a pretty good goal right there too.
Exactly. It's about creating value at the end of the day, and that's where it didn't happen by accident in that sense, in terms of the objective of what we wanted to do. But yeah, I think that's the most rewarding thing. Obviously, it's having these kinds of resources are great. But I would say also just personally, the most rewarding thing is and sure there's a lot of things that you can. There's a lot of different types of investments or assets or whatever it is. Appreciating assets are definitely better than depreciating assets, or rocket ship missions, whatever it may be for fun. It sounds fun. I think that the goal for this is again the most rewarding things. How can you give back to community and things like the Central Florida Foundation donation and
but no fancy cars. No big house.
I mean, listen. I'm obviously an automotive fan, with this. So, cars are great. Places are great. It's funny. The original. Well, okay. So, from like a house standpoint, one of the original ways that I actually funded Luminar was because didn't have any money that went into this original. The most that I eventually got was this Teal Fellowship, which was like $100K, but like it's not nearly enough to start what this kind of business is, and keep it going. By the way, too, because it was spread out over 2 years, so that was like $50K a year, and then after taxes, all this stuff, you can't run a business off that. So I actually started this like hacker house concept of where I would just go, and I think I was like 16, 17 at the time. I just go out and like rent these huge mansions here too that in the Bay Area and elsewhere, and just sublet all the different rooms, to different types of entrepreneurs. So I'd take it out. It would be like, $10,000-$15,000 a month, and then it would just get like $30K a month in income from renting out all the different rooms. So it was like creative strategies like that. So I'm not unfamiliar with. And then, by the way, and then you basically got like a free. You get on top of that, you get the free room too.
Right.
So and it ended up actually working very well as a recruiting strategy because it turns out the ultimate due diligence on people is living with them. So you
learn everything in a very short time.
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, one of the places that was amazing with that was actually this compound that we had in Portola Valley, which was in Silicon Valley. That was actually a former tank compound there too. It was like hundreds of acres up in the hills of Silicon Valley with this 50,000 square foot space and mansion and workshop garage that was like actually a form of tank repair facility, and it was like those days were amazing. But I think like obviously we've evolved pretty dramatically beyond that, but yeah, never forget to have fun every once in a while. I still got my tank,
So that's something.
So if you ever want to go tank drifting,
we can do that. So what do you do? I know you're always here. You work all the time. What do you do for fun here in Central Florida?
Apart from tank drifting, no.
other than the tank drifting.
But yeah, I would say. There's a lot of stuff. It's funny. I go to the despite it being known for, I go to the theme parks less than you probably think. But I honestly just the one weather is amazing. It's amazing every time. 80% of the time.
That's an Anchorman reference. Yeah, so you've seen Anchorman. Yeah, we got that.
Exactly. But yeah, and then from I love going out on the lakes here. It's nothing more amazing there too. And I'll never turn on a great jet ski ride either, for that matter. But yeah, I think it's good stuff, and but love just hanging out with friends and. I consider all my colleagues friends as well, when it comes to Luminar and building kind of that family community that we have. But yeah, a bunch of love great food. In the winter, while there's not a lot of skiing here, love to try and get out every once in a while, all those kinds of things. So.
Let's talk about that donation, $70 million. Why'd you decide to make that donation to the organization?
So I think the key is, it was clear within Central Florida that these guys are the very, very sophisticated, foundation that's probably the most developed for the local community and region, and are very successful in deploying capital at this stage and to date. But when it comes down to it, looking for the right partner to be able to successfully advise, manage, and do everything when it comes to these kinds of donations, and for me to be able to provide input, on on what happens in Central Florida and actually be able to help the local community and what can go on with a pretty significant impact, I saw as a huge opportunity because, you take a look at a lot of other major cities and metropolitan areas around the U.S., they have billions, tens of billions, going into there all the time, even with philanthropic donations, among other things, or even just tax dollars that are spent. When it comes to Orlando, it's actually been run pretty efficiently, and that's where I think that there is opportunity to be able to step in and make a huge impact. And we saw that, I think it was, like 70, 80 million or so that's been donated in aggregate over the past couple of decades there, where there could be a huge opportunity to start, making a huge donation, multiply that effect, and be able to sort of unleash the potential for what Orlando can be. So I saw that as it's a good opportunity, and obviously a better community it ultimately equals a better environment for people, for companies, for everything, including Luminar for that matter as well. So it's been good.
Let's leave it with legacy here. So you're billionaire at 25. You're now 26. You got a long ways to go.
I've already hit my quarter-life crisis.
Right, you're already in it. You bought a tank, for crying out loud. What do you want your legacy to be as you look forward? As you look back on all this, what do you want your legacy to be here in Central Florida?
It's a good question, and I think ask me the question 10, 20, 30, 40 years from now, and I'll probably continue to have evolving answers because, right now it's the objective in terms of building a company is build, the goal for what we're trying to do extends obviously far beyond the scope of Central Florida in terms of having this affecting transportation and saving lives everywhere globally. There's 1.5 million lives lost on the road every year. As much as that, and as much as 50 million serious injuries or just injuries of any kind that are frankly just preventable with this kind of technology and implementation. And so I would say from a legacy standpoint, the biggest thing is this unveiled this plan for the company. It was called the 100-100-100 plan, with the overall objective of having an opportunity to save 100 million lives and 100 trillion hours on the road over the next 100 years. And that's what I want to do. That's everything that's leading up to it. And I think when it comes to a Central Florida perspective, I think building the preeminent, technology company in Florida, and hopefully one of the great technology companies of our generation over the course of the next couple of decades. There's been a lot of amazing success stories in terms of what people built out by having that level of impact. But I think I couldn't think of anything more significant from a the technology and a humanitarian perspective of what we could be doing than what we're executing to now. So that's the objective, and I think that's probably the biggest legacy. Honestly, you could give. You could have $100 billion and give away every last dollar of it, but I don't even think that would have as much impact at the end of the day by any means as the work that we're doing with Luminar and what it will ultimately mean to society. So obviously there's a lot to be done, and but I think making the impact that we can today, and even starting with philanthropy, like most people, it's kind of interesting with philanthropy is that end up starting really late on in life, by the time they do those 100 things before you die, so to say, from your book. But I think actually one of the biggest opportunities to make an impact is to actually influence and shape the way that things develop and leverage capital to that. So I think that's why getting started pretty early is only a good thing and helps people earlier as well. So
who's mentoring you?
That's a good question. I have a lot of great advisors across the board, and everything from great board members to advisory board members to other stuff. Like even going throughout the whole going public process. Had a great partner with Alec Gores. Was one who's very successful. billionaire private equity magnate in his own right, that successfully sold a tech company, a PC company, actually really early on, in when he was pretty young in his career, and just continued to build that empire. And from a business standpoint, that's a great input. So we've had great mentors all the way to, like in the early days, having the Thiel Fellowship program with Peter Thiel and those guys, being able to help inspire what can be done and being able to just help provide general entrepreneurship guidance and everything. You have to learn from a lot of people, but I would say that, at the same time, one of the key things is also just doing things that if you have a lot of conviction that something is right and real evidence to back it up, and there's no evidence to prove it otherwise, but it's not conventional, that's something that trips up a lot of people. Like I mentioned, even from unconventional financing strategies to coming up with the idea of the hacker houses of renting out mansions to be able to finance a company. Traditional logic would be like you have to raise your first seed round to get like huge dilution for everyone to move forward. It's like a lot of different things that have to converge. So I think that's what I think is just trusting yourself as well in terms of the logic behind it, with input from all the right advisors and mentors and everything along the way.
It's interesting though, you talked about all these different ways you went about it. You didn't go the conventional route with Stanford. A few months and you were gone. Does your mind just work differently, you think, to where you can see a solution to something that maybe other people can't? They're going the conventional route, you say, no, I think I have a different way. Do you think that's how your mind works?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's and you don't always have to reinvent the wheel where it's not needed, but it's needed more often than you would think. Mm-hmm. So yeah, and there's always optimizations that you can do. You have to think about problems differently. Never take any assumption for granted, and kind of you have to have that first principles mentality and approach, from a Orlando perspective, and talk about advisoring or mentorship perspective is actually the CTO we brought on as a co-founder, Jason Eichenholz, is also a key driver for coming out here and helped build and scale out the original team that we had, and you just had kind of that influence on the long-term R&D roadmap with everything. So he's been based out here for quite some time, and really had that key influence and drive to show what was possible for Orlando and enabling all of that to happen as well, and kind of kickstarting this effort and moving full speed ahead. So that's that was someone that was also a great advisor early on, and then ended up actually joining to help execute and make all of it happen. So it's a good story and example of great local leaders.
All right. I think we got it.